Good evening, and welcome to the September 7th meeting of the City of Vista Planning Commission. We have a quorum, but we're kind of waiting for Commissioner Savage, so we'll go ahead and proceed, and hopefully he'll show up here in a few minutes. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Grimm will lead us in the pledge. If you'll stand and join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Presby, roll call, please. Very good. We've been informed that Commissioner Hastings and Commissioner Aguilera will not be joining us tonight, so it'll just be the four of us until Commissioner Savage appears. Commissioners, the next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our meeting of July 20th. If there are no changes, can we hear a motion to approve? All of us were here on the 20th, weren't they? Commissioner Garrettson.
I would recommend we approve the minutes as written.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Commissioner Looney seconds the motion. All in favor, and I believe our voting machines will work tonight, so cast your vote. And the motion passes with 4 affirmative votes, Commissioner Hastings, Commissioner Savage, and Commissioner Aguilera being absent. Ms. Chow, any changes to our agenda this evening?
Good evening, Chair. No changes tonight. Thank you.
All right, very good. The next item on our agenda is oral communications. This is a time that the Commission sets aside for members of the public to address the Commission on items that are not on our agenda. I have no speaker slips. If you do wish to address the Commission tonight, we request that you fill out a speaker slips that are out in the hallway. Seeing none, we'll move on to our first public hearing. Vista Self-Storage, and Mr. Winters, I believe the staff report is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Rossler. We'll go to the PowerPoint. This project is a request for a special use permit and site development plan for a 3-story self-storage facility with outdoor storage of recreational vehicles at 522 North Avenue. The applicant is Clear Sky Capital, SS Investor, LLC, and the file number is P200348. The project location is located just a little bit to the southeast of the intersection of North Avenue and North Melrose Drive. Project site is 2 parcels that total 4 acres in size, and it's designated as a commercial industrial land. Currently, it's been serving as a parking lot for various uses of the property over the last few decades. General plan designation for the project site is industrial general, which allows for a broad range of industrial land uses designed to be compatible with the surrounding area. Zoning is North Melrose Industrial Area, specific plan 8, Area B, which designates it as industrial commercial zone. Summarizing the project, it's for the construction of a 181,000 square foot, 3-story self-storage facility on the southern portion of the property, with outdoor storage of RVs on the northern portion of the site, and the project includes an 8-foot high screen wall surrounding the vehicle storage area along the east property line. Landscaping would comprise approximately 15% of the site at over 26,000 square feet. This is the site plan. North is towards the left and looking at this. So you'll see that the building is at the southern portion of the site, which is shown to the right. In the parking lot area is the 2 covered RV storage areas. There's a gated entrance to the facility that's located going south from the street access along the property line where there's joint access with the neighboring business. And then the entrance would be to the left as you drive south. The driveway loops around the entire storage building to the back where customers would have access to some of the storage units at the ground floor. This is the landscape plan showing that the landscape is concentrated along the perimeter, the street frontage, and in the areas around the RV storage in front of the office area. As I mentioned, landscaping would comprise 15% of the site, which exceeds the 10% requirement for industrial zones. This slide was put together by the applicant to illustrate the walls and fencing that are proposed. The red line represents a CMU or concrete panel decorative wall that would correspond to the building color. The blue line to the east of the property, which is along the railroad track, basically approximately 100 feet back from North Avenue, the fencing wall would transition into a metal mesh panel design. Around the southern portion of the site, at the rear of the property behind the building, a wrought iron security fence would be installed, and there would be a secured vehicular gate at the project entrance. The slide shows the elevations to the building on all 4 sides. The north elevation would be facing North Avenue. You can see here that it looks like a 2-story structure due to the change in topography. If you look at the south elevation, you would see the change in grade to where it's apparent that it's a 3-story structure viewed from the south and from the east. From the western side and the northern side, it would look like a 2-story building. This is a material board showing the items that would be used for the architecture, which includes metal canopies, metal siding combined with stucco siding, and a split-face decorative block at the base of the building. For the floor plan, all 3 floors are similar with the exception that the second floor, which would be at ground level from the entrance on the north side of the building, would have the 1,781 square foot office area, and the floor plan would have 2 elevators for moving the customer storage items. As far as zoning conformance, it's a permitted use within specific Plan 8, Area B. A special use permit is required for the building to exceed 2 stories or 35 feet in height. The proposed is 3 stories at 38 feet in height. The building majority up to the parapet is at 35 feet in height in compliance with the zone. The only portion that goes up to 38 feet is the tower, which is basically to house the elevators. There are 36 parking spaces required under the zoning. They are provided on the plan, plus 45 parking spaces for the RVs. And as mentioned, a minimum 10% of the site must be landscaped, and the project site will feature 15% landscaping. Staff's recommendation, the proposed project is exempt under CEQA as an infill development project, and staff's recommendation is for the Planning Commission to recommend City Council of approval of a special use permit and site development plan for the described project at 522 North Avenue. To add a little bit more information, the project does have to go to the City Council under specific Plan 8 for the special use permit to go 3 stories in height. Staff is available to answer any questions, and I believe the applicant, Russ Colvin, will speak on the project as well and give an opportunity. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant at this point, and then we'll open it up for questions of staff and the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Russ Colvin. I'm here this evening on behalf of Clear Sky Capital, the owner of the property, developer of the project. I'd like to first thank the Planning Commission for the work on the project In addition, I would like to thank the staff, in particular John Conley, Director of Community Development Engineering, Chris Winters, Associate Planner, Community Development, Michael Ressler, Principal Planner, and Patsy Chow, Deputy Director and City Planner, Community Development. Without all of their efforts, there would be no project. In January of 2020, I completed a project in Escondido, which at the time within the self-storage industry was considered the nicest self-storage facility in North San Diego County. In May of 2020, when I started talking with Mr. Connolly, I told him that I wanted to build the nicest self-storage facility in San Diego County except in Vista, this project. And I think we've achieved that goal, assuming that you all approve the project. I do truly believe it'll be the nicest facility in North San Diego County. About 2/3 of the people who make the decision to store things are women. Increasingly, they demand high-quality, modern self-storage facilities, climate control, and with excellent security. I think the project far exceeds all those standards. A place where individuals and businesses will be able to store their valuables and be confident they are safe and secure in a temperature-controlled environment. Finally, one more fact that I want to share this evening. If approved, our contractor on this project will be Arco Murray, which is one of the 5 largest construction companies in the United States and the top self-storage contractor in the United States. Again, I thank everyone, the Planning Commission and the staff who worked so hard on this project. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Yashler? Are you here just for questions or? Okay. All right. Very good. All right. Any questions for staff or the applicant from the commission? Commissioner Looney?
Thank you. For staff, a couple things. The CMU decorative wall, you had mentioned either a CMU wall or a precast wall. What makes this finish, or what is the finish that makes it decorative?
The wall was intended to be designed to match the split face wall that's used on the base of the building. We've put a condition of approval for the final design to be approved by the city planner, I believe, or community development director. So we're going to have a look at the final material. It was suggested that would be a decorative split face block or a concrete panel type that would have the decorative pilasters at certain segments to be determined.
Okay, that's helpful. And with this wall, we've got a lot of it that parallels the railroad track. Is there any accommodation for tagging in this particular area of the city that can happen somewhat frequently?
Generally, what we do is we condition the projects for removal of any graffiti within a certain time frame. I do believe we have the condition in there, and I can do a quick search for that if you'd like.
Okay. I didn't see it, but that, if it's there, that's fine.
If it's not in there, we can add it.
Okay. That was all. Thank you.
Commissioner Grimm?
Now we're on. Just a quick comment and then a question. And my comment is just thank God that women have demanded better facilities. The question is, on one of the sets of, the larger sets of plans as opposed to the smaller, the blue looks more blue, and then on the smaller ones it has a purplish tinge. I assume that we're looking at the one that actually has more blue in the color for the. Yeah, it's part of the printing, but I just wanted to be sure it wasn't coming out purple. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. This is a public hearing. I have no speaker slips except from the applicant, so I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to commissioner discussion. I had one comment, and I'd like Commissioner Looney's opinion of the eastern wall of the facility. It's 3 stories. They have 1, 2, 3 different material types and 3 different colors. In my mind, the only folks that are going to see this are people that are on the Sprinter or the single-family neighborhood on the other side of the railroad tracks. And it's basically a flat wall with a flat roof on it. So I was interested in Commissioner Looney's opinion, is if that was acceptable, or is there anything else that they can do to address that flat wall? Are you concerned about it?
I did look at this and I thought, man, that's a lot of wall and it's a lot of height. I think one of the things that that I took into consideration was the topography, because it does drop down.
Okay.
We do have this wall that parallels the railroad track, and then the structures on the east side of the track are at such a level where I don't see it being offensive in any way. Yes, there are ways to create more of a wall offset. It adds a significant cost, and I don't think the cost is going to give us the aesthetic benefit that's really needed for this location.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I appreciate your input. That was basically my only concern. Any other comments or questions about the project? No? All right. Okay.
Chairman
Commissioner
Rossler, Planner Chris Winters, we can add that condition. It's not currently in the conditions for removal of graffiti within 72 hours or whatever the commission would suggest.
Okay. And does that require them to also put the coating on the wall that makes it easier for the removal of the graffiti?
We do have a condition that covers graffiti-resistant coating.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Grimm had one more question for us.
Yeah, just a quick question, Chris. The reciprocal access that was talked about, I didn't see a condition that keeps that in place for this project. Is that something that's already done somewhere else, or do we need to add a condition that would, carry that with the project?
Thank you, Commissioner. That is already in place. It's applicable to the properties, and the neighboring property owner has also provided a letter of support for the project. I can distribute that to the commission if you like.
But my question is that something that can be changed by the people involved in the letters, or is that something the city actually, through some kind of a condition, has jurisdiction over that so that it doesn't go away in the future?
Reciprocal access. I believe it's something that must be maintained between the property owners.
And the vehicle for that is?
Is there an easement in the title policy that applies to both properties?
I'm going to go ahead and make sure I get this right, and if we can ask Russ Colvin.
Sure. Okay.
Very good, thank you.
All right. You good?
I'm good.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Savage. Yeah, it's got to be green.
There we go. All right. Yeah, John, thank you so much for the report. I just wanted to check in on the electronic safety and security. I know there wasn't a specified if it was an alarm, if it was cameras. I didn't know if there was a plan yet in place, but it being a storage facility, cameras might be an optimal system. So I didn't know I don't know if we had the goal here, but it did seem like a kind of vague terminology for alarms, cameras, intrusion detectors, intercoms. on page 27 of 63 of the report. And I didn't know if that was clarified, how that was being accomplished. I didn't see that in the plans. I could have missed that.
Thank you, Commissioner. We did have a summary of the security plan that gives an overview of the system. And thank you, Walter. We have a condition of approval that requires installation of the alarms, cameras, intrusion detectors, and so on, and a storage of video files to be made available to law enforcement if requested for investigation purposes.
Okay. And that's just going to be, and that's just for a general site camera is the minimum requirement there that we're putting in?
It might be better if we could ask Yasser to respond on this question, I believe. Or Russ Colvin will take it.
Sorry.
We have done these in a lot of different locations, and we use a ProVigil system, which is basically 24-hour monitoring on the outside, and we have the system that monitors everything on the inside. So, for example, on the inside, if the facility is closed and for some reason somebody got in there and they're inside, it sets off the alarm if there's any movement. On the outside, if there's any movement, anything larger than probably a cat, any movement on the outside after hours, it sets off the ProVigil alarm system, and then they start tracking it, and that is tracked remotely, off-site. And they are told to leave. If they don't leave the site immediately, the police are called. This all happens within, 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
So is the outside of the building completely covered by cameras?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, that's great.
It's really a great system.
I figured with your guys' credentials that you had it handled. I just wanted to confirm.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Okay. And Commissioner Looney?
Yeah, just one comment. I know as a developer, you're concerned about your return on investment, and you've created a high-end storage facility. And one of the things that we have seen over the years is we got a beautiful building, but unfortunately, and it's a minor thing, the trash enclosure looks trashy on many of the projects. And so I want to make sure that the roof, we've called out for a metal roof, that it's of a gauge that's not going to be subject to dents or damage easily with people throwing cardboard boxes on top. We've seen this in the past, and I just want to make sure that this is kind of a preface to the building. Even though it's small, let's just make sure that in the long term it has a roof structure that's going to match the appearance of your building. So again, it's a minor thing, but I've seen a lot of nice projects. Okay. Thank you. That was all.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Looney?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve. Make a motion to approve the application as stated for P20 0348.
Chair Rossler, the motion would be a motion to recommend approval to the City Council.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Grimm?
I would second that. I was just wondering if Mr. Looney wanted to include in his recommendation about a stronger gauge steel on the roof structure. For the trash.
I don't want to specify the gauge of steel, but I would like to maybe emphasize the point that it needs to be of a gauge that is not subject to easily being dented.
So subject to the community development director, a gauge subject to the...
Yes. Does that work for you? Okay.
All right. We've got an additional condition to, for the community development director to approve the gauge of the steel on the roofs covering on the trash enclosure.
And then also to put in that there is a maintenance agreement for the tagging? Because I don't think, Chris, you said that was not in the report?
Oh, yes, the maintenance of the wall?
Yeah,
Maintenance of wall for graffiti removal?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We've got a motion and a second to approve with additional conditions. Please cast your vote. There we go. Sorry. Mine didn't turn white. And the motion is approved unanimously of the commissioners that are here, with Commissioner Hastings and Commissioner Aguilar absent. Very good. Congratulations. We will now move along to our second public hearing, P21-0144, Smoke Shop at 777 East Vista Way. And Mr. Winters, you're up again.
Thank you, Chairman Rossler. As mentioned, it's a special use permit to allow for a smoke shop at 777 East Vista Way, Suite 202. Applicant is Bashar Saman, file number P21-0144. The project location is a 1,000 square foot suite located within the Vista Palms Plaza, an existing commercial center located on a 1.57 acre site. It's at the southeast corner of Townsite Drive in East Vista Way. It's adjacent to other commercial retail, service, and restaurant uses. General plan land use designation is neighborhood commercial, which allows for a broad range of commercial services, including retail, restaurant, and office uses. The zoning is C1 commercial, which allows for various forms of retail, offices, and commercial services consistent with the general plan. A smoke shop does require a special use permit under the zoning ordinance. Under the definition in the zoning ordinance of a smoke shop, it means a retail business that sells tobacco, tobacco derivatives, non-tobacco substances produced for the purposes of smoking, and any types of paraphernalia related to that. No smoking of tobacco or any other product shall occur in any portion of the premises owned, rented, controlled, used, or operated by a smoke shop, and that is in the city's definition. The proposal is for tenant improvements within the existing suite to put in a sales counter, display areas, office, which is existing, and storage areas. There would be no exterior modifications. The site plan, I've highlighted in blue the location of the suite. The proposed hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday. These images show the frontage of the suite. I've delineated it with a couple of blue lines, if you see those at the upper left. This picture at the upper right is looking back into the suite with the storage area to the rear on the left, the office to the rear on the right. There's a view lower left, the entrance to the office, and on the right, the storage area. Floor plan shows the proposed arrangement. There would be display cases at the front of the store, the entrance near the parking lot at the left side of the screen, the counter area is highlighted in blue, and the office, storage area, restroom, and utility rooms are marked out towards the left-hand side of the slide. For zoning conformance, the zoning code, as I mentioned, requires consideration of a special use permit. The site is not located within 1,000 feet of a school. That's one of the requirements in our zoning code for the sale of tobacco products as a primary use for a business. There have been conditions of approval added for the project that include no one under 21 years of age permitted within the premises, smoking is prohibited on the premises, a security plan must be submitted to the city for approval. The windows on the store frontage shall be unobstructed, and no window displays or signage would be permitted. Any proposed expansion of hours will require an SUP amendment that would have to come back to the Planning Commission. And the hours are duplicated there at the bottom of the slide. 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, 9 to 10 Friday and Saturday. Staff's recommendation, project is exempt from CEQA as a minor alteration to private structure. Staff's recommendation is for adoption of a resolution granting a special use permit for a smoke shop at 777 East Vista Way, Suite 202, subject to the project's conditions of approval. The applicant is here to answer any questions with staff. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So, Commissioners, any questions of staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't have any speaker slips. Yes?
Good evening. My name is Anthony Mayola. I apologize for no speaker slipped, but I'm sent here on behalf of the owner and management of 774 East Vista Way, and we would just like to publicly show our support for the smoke shop. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Do we need him to fill out a speaker slip? Would you, before you leave tonight, would you get one of our slips and fill it out so we have your name for the record? So. All right, so I will close the public hearing and open it up to Commissioner discussion. Commissioner Looney?
I'm not sure if it's for Commissioner discussion or for the applicant. We typically don't respond to floor plan layouts, but in the retail industry, I hope that you've considered the location of your cash register and your checkout, because I just see with this layout the potential for shoplifting, where someone could come in 10 feet into the door and make a quick exit when the cash register is at the back end of the retail store. So again, there's probably a reason for it, but and maybe there's a controlled entrance and exit, but that's the only comment that I really have.
Okay. Commissioner Grimm?
Yeah, I'm not sure really who to ask this question to. I was looking at the sheriff's conditions, and I noticed that it's a camera recording system, so it's not like the previous project where there's, ProVigil or whatever is where they're constantly monitoring. So then it goes on to say loitering is prohibited. I'm just wondering, that I assume would fall on the people that are working behind the counter. If there's loitering outside, then they'd have to go and instruct the guys to move on. If they didn't, I guess they could call the sheriff's office. Is that kind of how it would work?
Basically, it has to be posted in the exterior building area, and then the sheriff's department would respond to any calls.
Okay. But the first line of defense would be the shop owner to say you can't hang out here, probably.
I don't know if the shop would operate that way, and everything I've heard in my experience is that it's directed to the sheriff's department. But
Okay.
Thank you guys for having me, and thank you guys for your help. But yes, to answer your questions about the security system that we have, we're going to have a 24/7 alarm system and monitoring system inside the shop, and there'll be one camera directed to the front parking spots right in front of the shop, and it will be triggered motion sensor. So if there's any movement inside the shop or outside, right within the 10 feet in front of the frontage of the store, that motion censored camera will turn on and start recording. And if there's any breakage, the alarm will trigger. If somebody breaks the windows or try to force their way into the shop, the alarm will trigger. But as far to answer your question about loitering, yes, whoever's working there, the employee will nicely approach whoever's doing whatever they're doing in front of the store and ask them nicely to leave. And if there's any resistance or if there's any problems to be caused, the cops will be called. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Before you leave, the location of the cash register inside the store, did you get?
Yes, actually, there's a reason why it's back there. All the displays that you've seen on the plans are actually closed. Nothing is self-serving inside the store. Everything that the customer would require or would like to buy, the cashier or the gentleman who works there will grab himself and bring it to the cash register to check the customer out. So the clients will not be able to reach anything.
Super. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Garrison.
Yes, I have a question about the back of the building. It goes to the creek. And we know there are a lot of homeless that hang out back there. So the question is, what is your security from the rear of the building? Whoever needs to answer it.
As far as the back, there will be no cameras on the exterior. There will be just a motion sensors that detects if somebody tries to break in to the shop. But the shop window is elevated enough that there's nobody can reach that window. So for the homeless people in the back, I honestly, I don't know if there's anything that we can do about that.
Well, if there's a window, it can be reached. I mean, it would seem to me that's not a secure area if it's just a window and you're counting on how high it is.
The window is reinforced with steel bars.
Okay.
And again, there will be a motion sensor and against the breakage of any glass in that window. If somebody even tries to touch the glass, the alarm will trigger.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. So we've conducted our public hearing. We've had our commission discussion. I have to tell you that I struggled with this one. 20 years ago, my mom passed away from lung cancer, and she was a lifetime smoker in her adult lives. And the last year was really difficult for the family. And as I read this, I thought about her, and I would not want another family in Vista to have to go through what we went through. So unfortunately for the applicant, I'm not going to support the application tonight. So I just wanted to share that with you. So anyway, would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Grimm.
I have similar concerns as my father also passed away from cigarettes, but this is legal in the city of Vista. They've met all the requirements. So I would recommend approval per staff recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Savage?
And I can second that. I'll second that.
The motion? Okay. All right, Commissioners, it's been moved and second to approve the use permit. Please cast your vote. And the motion passes on 4 to 1, with Chairman Rossler voting no. So the motion passes. Very good. All right. Congratulations. Next on our agenda is a report that we asked for several months ago on in lieu fees and how they worked. So, Ms. Chow, is that yours?
Chairman Rossler, Commissioners, if you don't mind, I'm just going to stay up here, and so I don't have to. I'm just being lazy tonight. As long as John says it's okay, I guess it's okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. All right. So just wanted to kind of go over this. It's a short presentation. I've got help from Jason Chrisman, the senior engineer in Land Development, to help me put this together. He's not here tonight, but however, I've met with him, obtained some information from him that we thought would be helpful in the discussion of this topic. Back on July 6th, the Commission had asked more information about in lieu fees, how it works, some background on it as a result of a project, the Pace parking lot that was before you that night. So, I tried to get here a little earlier, but here we are. So I will go through the slides here and just kind of give you a little bit of background in terms of what this is all about. So starting with background on the California state law and city ordinances, we have, obviously, as you all know, the Subdivision Map Act, that basically talks about subdivision of land and how that's to be done. So it gives basically local agencies the ability to regulate and control design of subdivisions. And when at the local level, we have that addressed through Title 17 in our City of Vista ordinance, and basically talks about subdivision of land, goes specifically more into how we dedicate for streets, public streets, easements, etc., and also touches on improvements before approving a final map in a subdivision. That it basically talks in there about the fact that the City Council will require improvements as far as streets, drainage, water, sewer improvements, etc. And under Title 16, which is actually dealing with building, it says that no building can really go up or structure actually be erected unless there is one half of the street abutting such a parcel as being dedicated and improved, so that there's a direct tie when we're actually issuing a building permit. So just want to kind of put that on the table as well. There are, under the 1756-07-070, the code talks about types of guarantees that are acceptable while in the form of, dedications, improvements that need to take place as part of a project. So it goes into 4 different types of guarantees, and starting with a cash bond. But the cash bond is typically associated with public right-of-way improvements. And number 2 talks about an instrument of credit, which is like basically opening up a specific account or a letter of credit where there is an approved financial institution that says, yes, there is such amount of money here set aside, but typically that's associated with private improvements, not public right-of-way improvements. And then you have the more known or typically known as a bond, which is executed by a company that's authorized to act as a surety in this particular option, and that's typical of both public and private projects. So it kind of covers both in that regard. Now, the fee in lieu of construction is what came up at the last meeting when you asked about, how does it apply, how is it calculated, et cetera, et cetera. So in the case when the improvements are not coming in, and I'll go in a little more detail in the next slide or so, is when the improvements are not physically being built, then a fee comes in to make sure that that's secured in some form or fashion for these improvements to actually take place in the future. So it's not like they're not being required to do it, it's just that there is a provision that allows for substitution of the actual improvements. And one thing I wanted to mention to you, just kind of going up on the street dedications and improvements related to building, there are certain exemptions for when the actual improvements will take place. So for instance, if you have like a tenant improvement that's just interior improvement, or if you had the addition of an accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit, or you are building a pool or something like that, obviously that would not trigger the need for street improvements because that would be owners at that point. I mean, it wouldn't apply at that point. So there are certain exemptions in the code dealing with these types of situations. So it's not across the board building permit. So just kind of wanted to clarify that. So on to the next slide. This is getting a little more, just wanted to go over a little more detail where it's highlighted there under 1656-070. When it's talking about that fee, the in lieu fee, it's basically calculated in the amount of what the construction costs are in that current year. And then there is an additional 30% contingency that's added on for soft costs, which are basically engineering design costs, contingencies along with the original number, and that would be deposited or be created, I guess, in terms of creating an account for that, and they would be put together and put aside into a restricted assets account that would basically cover the actual construction, the improvements in the public right-of-way for that street that's the subject street. So in other words, we're not going to collect the monies and put the money aside, and then later on there's another project somewhere else in the vicinity, and we're going to use it on some other street. So that's not how it works, because I think that was brought up as a concern as to, well, how do we know that the money is not going to go somewhere else instead of actually addressing the subject area that was to begin with. So there is that tying of the two together. So that's allocated and actually put to use on that subject street. And when it's talking about the pro rata basis, it's really more about the fact that it covers half the full width of the street adjacent to the project site's frontage. So it's not like they're going to build a whole extension. It's just, you know, they're responsible for the half where it's abutting or adjacent to the subject project that's bringing this about. So otherwise it would be unfair, because then you got the other side of it, which is the neighbor to the other side of the street, and they should be responsible for that. So that's the half width of the actual public right-of-way. The other items A, B, C, and E are just basically the same as in the previous slide that we just went over, so I won't repeat that. And then there is the actual implementation and how that takes place, and when does it apply, really? Because, you know, if we think about, well, then is it subjective? Is it per the city engineer? Is it because, you know, it feels like this is the right thing to do in this case, or how do we decide that? So the code gets specific about when it does apply, and the option to be able to keep the development moving forward, in other words, because not all things are equal. And so when there's a situation such as the ones that are described here, for instance, in the first item is that the construction could cause a traffic hazard. Or there is the fact that the subject property will be the only one that's going to be making improvements on that particular street. And suddenly it doesn't make sense, because then the adjacent properties are not going to match up with the improvements. So it'll be kind of a disconnect. So then in that case, if it's creating a situation when there's a hazard or an obvious traffic hazard, then that's when the fee in lieu might make sense here and be applied, you know, in this case. There's also instances where there's drainage issues that would be affecting more than one property and therefore not easily addressed. And I'll show you an example later on in the next slide where there is this particular issue with the drainage. And so it's probably not in the best interest to cause this adverse impact on a nearby adjacent property owner. And so therefore, you know, things are looked at more globally and how that can be better addressed. And obviously, if there's no public benefit in the immediate future, if it doesn't make sense, and why are we asking for this improvement at this given point in time, and it makes sense to kind of wait later until we have maybe more of a collective approach in addressing an improvement, whatever may be the case, then that's a consideration as well. So look at the big picture. And there's always the consideration, obviously, at the discretion of the city engineer, as the city engineer makes the recommendation or the decision to consider the in lieu fee, either as a result of all of the above that were just mentioned, or maybe there's some other circumstance where the city engineer is going to make a call that, hey, you know, let's take a look at this and see how that really applies here, and if it doesn't make sense, let's discuss the issue and see where it goes. So with all of that, the next one is talking about the fees collected must be applied on the actual street as the proposed improvements that are being deferred. So as I mentioned before, it's not like you're collecting on Vailview and then you're going to apply it down the street, or you're going to put it on Hacienda just because. You know, so there's got to be obviously the nexus as to where it's being collected and where it's going to be applied, and that's how it works. So it doesn't create confusion down the road. Again, the 30% additional fee that's collected for contingencies, and like I said, for soft engineering design costs, to cover any unexpected or additional, you know, costs or fees that are as a result of the in lieu fee or the improvements themselves. And I added the bullet here, as after talking to Jason about it, is that there's not a future value calculation into what it could be or what it would be, because we really don't know. Unless, you know, I pull out my crystal ball, I guess, but since that doesn't exist, we're just going to stick with what we know and the present value of whatever the costs are. And the 30% contingency does help in that regard, because it does cover some things that are, related to design, engineering, things of that nature that are known facts, but there isn't a future value calculation, obviously, because we don't know when the improvements might actually go in collectively, and I just wanted to clarify that. So on to the next slide. There's an example that Jason actually put together for this, which is a real project. It's 933 Valeview Drive subdivision. And basically what they were doing here is the creation of one additional parcel. So the result would be 2 parcels out of 1 with a frontage on Valeview Drive. And there's going to be a widening of would be required anyways as a result of the review, as a result of the subdivision. The roadway would need to be widened and would have to have curb gutter improvements, a pedestrian path that would be required as part of the tentative parcel map. In this area, however, and I'll show you a picture in the next slide, there's no other single-family residence or homes that have actually widened or improved the roadway or actually put in a pedestrian path. So it's a situation that does not exist right now. And there's the issue of drainage with the runoff, which would be concentrated onto an additional property if, in fact, the curb and gutter got installed. So now we would be creating a problem that doesn't exist right now, and why would we do that? So if you look at this picture right here, which the location of the project site, you can see it as it's the one parcel shown right now. It doesn't show the subdivision, but basically it will be creation of, there is a front lot, and then there will be a flag lot in the back, so fronting Valeview Drive. And then the picture at the bottom shows you exactly what I was trying to mention in the previous slide. Basically, there's no nearby adjacent improvements whatsoever. So in this case, the question is, why would we make them put in curb gutter sidewalk where it doesn't exist? And furthermore, if we were to install curb and gutter, we would be directing the water where it is not right now, and immediately would be impacting the subject property owner to the south. So all the water suddenly where it was, slowly, traversing the site and going all different directions and kind of following its natural course, and now would be all directed to the property owner immediately neighbor to the south. So that would not be a happy neighbor as a result of that decision, which would be a bad thing. So then in that regard, that's the condition, the consideration at that point where you say, okay, well, let's see where it makes sense and it doesn't. And in this case, it wouldn't make sense. So that's one example right there. The next slide is the actual putting together the numbers. So the calculations come in for the estimate as far as what the AC paving would be the overlay, the carbon gutter, and each of those line items would consider what the square footage is, the linear footage, at the unit price, which gives you the end result, the numbers for each of these line items added together. As a subtotal, you see the approximately $10,000. You tag on a 30% contingency on top of that, and you come up with that grand total in the yellow box, which is the $13,292.47. That would be the exact amount to be collected. That would be the in lieu fee for, instead of doing the improvements in this particular case at Valeview Drive. So that would be put aside, into its restricted account to be used later for a project for improvements on Valeview Drive, so that it targets and stays there where the need has been identified. So that's kind of a simple example, but nonetheless typical of what happens, especially on single-family homes, for single-family development, because it quite often it happens in this format where you have this semi-rural, this rural kind of feeling around where somebody's going to try to do a subdivision, and it really doesn't make sense. And that's pretty much the presentation that I had for the commission, just to kind of go over some of these basic points and hopefully address some of the questions that were coming up that Walter just basically said, I think we need to have a separate meeting on that. So thanks, Walter. So here we are. No, I'm just kidding. So here we are to talk about the specifics. But I'm happy to address any questions if you guys want to open it up for discussion. And I know if I don't have the answers, I'm sure Mr. Conley will probably have, or Michael, anybody can pitch in on some of the examples or things on the past. But there you have it.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Chow.
Sure.
Any questions? Commissioner Looney?
So Patsy, if that project that collects in lieu of fees, if it's never done, what happens to those funds?
So the fees stay put in there. And typically what happens, because I was having similar questions that when I was talking to Jason, is that when you have a capital improvement project that's coming along the way, and we have, several throughout the city, and the engineering department, usually what they'll do is that when they are working on certain improvements throughout the city, particular segments, whether they're in a small segment, street, or it could be a major type of a project or what have you, they will look at the pot of money that we have and see where the money was allocated to what street, and try to utilize that money so that it doesn't sit there forever and gets forgotten. So the fact is, in reality, when a CIP project comes along, the first thing they do is go look for, hey, where do we have the resources already? Because maybe we got some monies allocated, and they will extract from that fund and use it towards the project, which is a good thing. So it's not forgotten. In other words, it's not like it will never get done or anything like that. It may take a while for something to appear because you got to combine all the pieces together like in a big puzzle, but in time, it will happen. It is a matter of time, I guess. But that's how they approach it.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You were very detailed, and I never knew. And it was very informative for me. So thank you for putting that time in.
Sure.
Very good. Any other questions of Ms. Chow? Okay, thank you, Patsy. We appreciate your attentiveness to that
welcome.
concern.
Anytime.
Next item on our agenda are reports from commission members. Any reports or comments? Commissioner Grimm?
Just a comment. I don't know if anybody else had the same thoughts that I did when I was going through the staff report on the self-storage. But I think since I've been on the commission, there's been either 4 self-storages that have either been approved or built in the last, I don't know, two years or so. And like I said, it kind of brought up a concern for me. Are we getting to a point where we're getting saturated? My feeling now is kind of that we're providing that service for Encinitas and Carlsbad now, because nobody can afford to make it work there. So my thought, and I talked a little bit with John about this today, is that, and he suggested, and I think it's a good idea, that we maybe, if the rest of the commission feels the same, that we ask council to maybe take a look at this issue and see if we need to do something, tweak the ordinance a little bit or require more specific findings, for example, before a self-storage can go in. So I just kind of wanted to get the thought of the rest of the commission.
It's kind of like the dollar stores. A couple of years ago, we got saturated with those, and the council took action to make it a bit more difficult to do them and a bit more stringent review. So, Commissioner Looney?
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was an update on the Walgreens Community Church roundabout transaction.
Sure. So first of all, I hear you. And I think if the commission's okay, we'll bring it to the attention of the city manager and ask if the council's interested in looking at mini storages more. We've gotten a lot of applications, and we continue to get a lot of pressure for them, both where it's zoned and not zoned, so it's worth looking into. With respect to Walgreens, the church closed on the Walgreens property, is my understanding, so they'll be moving forward with a use permit here with us to locate their facility there, as well as some commercial uses that they're looking at. They will be finishing the dedication of the roundabout if they haven't already done so. I think we're slated to get a contractor out there before the end of the year to start the construction on completing the roundabout, so that little piece of property has been pretty well wrapped up. They also are in the process of selling their property they're on in the circle there, and there has been a pre-application submitted to the planning department for a multifamily development, which will ultimately come to the commission.
Very good. Commissioner Garrettson?
Yes, I would like to see a discussion on accessory dwelling units, specifically new legislation that basically allows the state to force those on single-family residents and zoning.
So two things. One, the ADUs have been doing that now for about 4 or 5 years. What's coming out in state legislation is SB 9, which was passed by the legislature, and it's at the governor's desk for signature. That allows people to subdivide their property in a single-family zone administratively without any city discretionary approval, and then build up to 2 duplexes on each lot. And that is probably what you're referring to, I'm guessing. So if SB 9 gets signed by the governor, which still remains to be seen, we will definitely come back and give you a legislative update of that and all the other fun stuff that the legislature's approved in this last housing session.
There was a big discussion at the recent Chamber of Commerce meeting, Government Affairs, and that was a big subject. People were concerned about what was going to happen to their single-family neighborhoods.
Yeah, so that's a big doozy. And we're still waiting, like I said, to see if the governor signs it. There's a lot of activity from the League of California Cities to oppose it. So we'll see, but that one's out there. So before the end of the year, I'll come back with an update depending on what happens in the legislative session.
Okay. Did we get Commissioner Looney's question answered? Okay, yeah, okay, all right. And the community church is moving into that Walgreens, and then they're going to sell their existing site?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a question for you on the infrastructure bills that are back in Washington, D.C. Are we going to be able to get any of those funds here for Vista?
So we're still waiting to see how that money rolls out. We've been told that Vista will get some infrastructure money. We don't know how much or what yet. There was some specific earmarks for certain things, which probably we're not going to get, but we will get some money probably for roads. Also worth mentioning that the City Council approved the ARPA funds, which were $26 million, I believe, and about half of that went to storm drain infrastructure improvements. So we got a big chunk of money for our storm drain system to fix what really is a corrugated metal pipe that runs under a lot of our streets. It's starting to decay, and we're starting to see sinkholes and things like that. So we're going to be able to repair that in the next 2 years with that money. So.
Okay, very good. And then I noticed that the City Council is going to be hearing a general plan amendment down on Sunset and Hacienda.
Yeah, so I have a couple things I wanted to cover in my report. Once you guys
Go for
have, are you done with the commission comments, questions? Okay.
Yours, John. Thank
So
you.
a couple things. One, we will not have a meeting on the 21st of September. So next meeting, well, we have October 5th or 19th. One of those two meetings we most likely will have, but we'll let you all know a couple weeks ahead. If anybody's going to have vacations during that time, just let us know. The City Council's reviewed a couple things last month. One was a proposed general plan amendment and zone change for what was called Pheasant Hill, which is the hillside off Guajome and Lado de Loma that's right back behind where they're building the Paseo Artist Village project. That project was approved for 24 single-family homes back in 2015. The developer's looking at changing the zoning and bringing it into the downtown specific plan at 40 units to the acre and building a high-density residential project there with access out onto Guajome. So the council reviewed that on the 10th of August and gave them some preliminary comments. It looks like they will move forward with a formal application on that site, which will come to the commission for recommendation before it goes to council. On August 24th, they discussed the concept of small lot zoning. Our zoning code right now in the 5 to 10 units per acre range really forces condominium development. So we've seen a lot of detached condos. And we really want to allow for fee simple ownership on small lots. So we're going to be looking at our code to make some updates, and we'll bring that back to the commission too. But really to allow the same arrangement that we're seeing with some of the recent projects, but with lot lines. So I'll report back to you once we have that drafted. A couple things coming up on the council's agenda is on the 14th, we have a general plan amendment and zone change request at Sunset. That's right in front of the Green Valley Mobile Home Park. There's 2 parcels there that sit on either side of their driveway that are vacant. One is zoned RM15, the other one is zoned commercial. They want to rezone the commercial property to RM and do a multifamily development for about 55 units on that site. So it's going to go to council for discussion. And then on the 28th of September, we'll have the North Avenue project back in front of the council, as well as the housing element, which we have to re-adopt because of some minor tweaks that HCD required. So that's my report, unless anybody has any questions.
On the general plan amendment on Sunset,
Yes.
I'm familiar with the property that's up the hill behind the mobile home park, and there's an ancient landslide on that property, so it would be important for them to do a detailed geotechnic report to make sure that they don't have any remnants of that ancient landslide on their property.
For sure. There is an approved project on that site too in the city of Oceanside, which they're working on right now. But yeah, we will definitely make them do the geotechnical.
All right. Anything else, gentlemen? No? Thank you, John.
Thank
you,
you.
Patsy. Chris, thank you. Walter. Keeping us out of trouble again. We will stand adjourned until October 5th, unless we're notified by staff that our next meeting will be on the 19th. So.